Mindshock. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. And today we are tackling quite the conspiracy. That of nuclear or atomic weapons not actually being real. That's right. There is a theory, and it's actually not a new one, that all of this is a hoax to hoodwink gullible coincidence theorists and authority-worshipping cultist bootlickers. Those that have denounced the use of logic and reason. Those that just have blind faith in the most corrupt entities the world has ever known. So in typical Mindshock fashion, we will be examining this, attempting not to fall for any logical fallacies unlike everything else out there. If you want to help support the Mindshock podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you're not getting them, you can also join Patreon. Even the free tier will get you all of your notifications. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. And if you are with us here live, drop them in the live chat. I'll try to get to each and every one. And you can also help support the podcast by becoming a YouTube member right here on YouTube. So, welcome everyone to this unprecedented deep dive, bringing receipts like never before to the substantiation of this theory with irrefutable scientific data. That's right. We're not going scientism here. We're going science. We're going the utilization of controls. We're going with dependent and independent variables here. So for all the triggered goofs out there, hold on to your hat. There appears to be quite a lot of substance to this particular theory. Aaron in the chat, welcome. I grew up in the 50s and 60s with the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. It was one of the themes that defined our lives. Yeah, I mean, trauma and fear-based mind control is a staple of MK Ultra. All of the gullible coincidence theorists, the conspiracy corruption deniers out there. In pre-MK Ultra disclosure, I mean, these goofs possibly had some kind of a leg to stand on. But we are living in modern times now, where all of these, just all of the corruption of statism is so well known now. I mean, it's kind of hard to be a devout coincidence theorist in this day and age, where MK Ultra, Tuskegee, the poisoning of St. Louis, the poisoning and MK Ultra testing and kidnapping of foster children by the CIA, MK Naomi, Operation Mockingbird, Operation Northwoods, Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, it would just take hours to go through all of these proven and disclosed conspiracies at this point. How many statist cult bootlickers are still maintaining that governments are trustworthy entities and they would never do something like XYZ? Whenever a new theory is being proposed, a lot of these bootlickers appeal to incredulity, whether it's chemtrails, aka geoengineering and aerosol spraying, now completely disclosed, but there's still goofs out there hallucinating that it's all mere contrails. I mean, how do you be a coincidence theorist or statist bootlicker post-2020? I mean, is there any cognitive function whatsoever? Flapop says these are all coincidences. Yeah, I mean, why would corrupt people engage in corruption? I mean, it's just a bridge too far for the coincidence theorists. Welcome, PsyOp within a PsyOp. Flat Bob, Silver Bear. Flat Bob says, let's start this thing off with a bang. Franklin Loza Pareto, greetings from South America. Greetings and salutations, Franklin. Truth Trollette got a notification. Yeah, sometimes they work. Welcome, IB McFly. IB McFly says, after Newsbender's 1968, I never thought nukes were real. I mean, yeah, we're really gonna dive into this theory like no one else has ever done before. I have to admit, at the onset, like the first time I heard this, I'm trying to remember the first time I heard this. It was not the evisceration of Joe Rogan at the hands of Eddie Bravo, when Eddie Bravo utterly decimated and humiliated that Joe Rogan goof with Basic Logic on the Joe Rogan podcast regarding this topic. I actually did a logical analysis on it. You can check it out here on Mindshock. I'm trying to think when I first heard this theory. It was probably several years before that. Just random posts online. And I didn't really give it too much thought. But I mean, come on. If Einstein's involved in something, I mean, what are the chances it's not fraudulent? Then again, if it was some kind of 4D psyop conspiracy, they wanted everybody to think nukes are fake, so they recruited the Einstein fraud to be involved with the Manhattan Project. I mean, was that what they were thinking? I mean, I'm not claiming that's true or untrue, but anyway, the last year or so, I've been kind of looking to this topic quite deeply, but let's look at I mean, obviously there's just a ton of propaganda, Oppenheimer, etc., regarding nuclear weapons. But let's go to the mainstream narrative, like the scientism narrative. So, Manhattan Project, quite involved. So, just real quick from the wiki, the Manhattan Project was a research and development program undertaken during WW2 to produce the first nuclear weapons. It was led by the U.S. in collaboration with the U.K. and Canada. From 42 to 46, the project was directed by Major General Leslie Groves of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Nuclear physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer was a director of the Los Alamos laboratory that designed the bombs. And of course, this laboratory further gained infamy as once employing Bob Lazar, possibly involved with Operation Bluebeam and being used as some kind of subject to test the leaking information to the public regarding extraterrestrial narratives. And if you haven't checked out the Bob Lazar podcast here on Mindshock, check that out. We go deep into the Lazar story, and I mean, that's a crazy one. If you haven't checked it out, check it out, because we go into Hell's Angels connections, the mysterious death of his first wife. I mean, there's so much there with Lazar. I mean, it's very possible he was being MK Ultra'd well before any kind of work at Los Alamos or Area 51 or any of those bases. So, yeah, Los Alamos, a lot of information about that laboratory. So, the Army program was designated the Manhattan District as its first headquarters, where in Manhattan, the name gradually superseded the official code name, Development of Substitute Materials, for the entire project. The project absorbed its earlier British counterpart, Tube Alloys, and subsumed the program from the American Civil Office of Scientific Research and Development. And again, this doesn't mean that a lot of this work was fake. They may well have tried to split the atom. That doesn't mean they succeeded. So, like a lot of these gullible goof coincidence theorists, I mean, their brains are so fried, they can only operate in false dichotomy logical fallacies, as if it were a hoax, it'd have to be a hoax from day one and everybody would have to be on it day one. Or it's not a hoax and 100% everything's real. Like these brain dead goofs, they just don't have the cognitive function to understand that humans are fallible and not everything goes according to plan. Murphy's Law. Obviously, Murphy's Law for a reason. So perhaps they really did try to split an atom, and perhaps they did develop some kind of explosive weapons, just really powerful explosives. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's mass nuclear radiation involved or splitting of any atoms. Obviously, powerful bombs are real. I mean, this was kind of a point Joe Rogan was too brain dead to fathom. No one is claiming that there aren't extremely powerful bombs. I mean, obviously. I mean, you could see the aftermath of these bombings, but a lot of these brain dead coincidence theorists and authority worshipping cultists, if they see a bombed city in their feeble minds, that could only mean it was a nuke. There's just not enough cognitive function to process that other types of bombs could have been used to bomb a city. It's pretty weird. Misinformation agent here, dropping some misinfo in the chat. I mean, that's very polite of you to disclose who you are here, but okay. All right. So, the Manhattan Project employed nearly 130,000 people at its peak and cost nearly $2 billion, equivalent to $27 billion in 2023. Over 80% of which was for building and operating the plants that produced the fissile material, which acted as fuel for the bombs. Enriched uranium was produced at Clinton Engineer Works in Tennessee. Plutonium was produced in the world's first industrial-scale nuclear reactors, built at Hanford site in Washington. Each of these sites were supported by dozens of other facilities across the U.S., UK, and Canada. Initially, it was assumed that both fuels could be used in a relatively simple atomic bomb design known as the gun-type design. When it was discovered that this design was incompatible for use with plutonium, an intense developmental program led to the invention of the implosion design. The work on weapons design was performed at the Los Alamos Laboratory in New Mexico and resulted in two weapons that were used during the war: Little Boy enriched uranium gun type and Fat Man plutonium implosion. The first nuclear device ever detonated was an implosion type bomb during the Trinity test conducted at the White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico on July 1645. The project was also responsible for developing the specific means of delivering the weapons onto military targets, and were responsible for the use of the Little Boy and Fat Man bombs in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki August 45, or alleged atomic bombings. Obviously, there were bombings. What kind of bombings is what we're going to be exploring here. The project was also charged with gathering intelligence on the German nuclear weapon project. Through Operation Alsos, Manhattan Project personnel served in Europe, sometimes behind enemy lines where they gathered nuclear materials and documents and rounded up German scientists. Despite the Manhattan Project's own emphasis on security, Soviet atomic spies penetrated the program. In the immediate post-war years, the Manhattan Project conducted weapons testing at Bikini Atoll as part of Operations Crossroads, developed new weapons, promoted the development of the network of national laboratories, supported medical research into radiology, and laid the foundation for the nuclear navy. It maintained control over American atomic weapons research and production until the formation of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission in January 47. Okay. So, that's the official narrative. Now, there's obviously a lot of problems with this narrative. And I'm not gonna rip it apart piece by piece from the beginning there, because that would just take too long. Now, we are diving deep, but I want to get to the real smoking guns, per se, and I want to get to them quickly, because all these triggered give coincidence theorists, I mean, we got to tackle this out of the gate. I want to get immediately to the irrefutable material, and then we can get to all the point-by-point debunking of the official narrative, if it can be debunked. Is Misinformation Agent still here, or did he leave? Did he get triggered by this very topic? And that's another thing, too. Isn't it weird how coincidence there's just certain topics they get really triggered by? As if it's just like their religion, that it has to be this type of bomb. Like, they just can't... It's almost like it's blasphemy, as if it's any other types of bombs. Like, the atom had to have been split. Otherwise, they get triggered. They just can't handle any other types of bombs being used to bomb all these innocent people. I mean, it's just crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. All right. So, let's get to the big stuff. I mean, we could examine the videos of the tests, and there's so many problems with those. Actually, I don't know. What do you got? Do you guys want to go over the footage first, or do you want to get straight to the Japanese bomb drops? I actually covered this footage. I forget which, maybe it was a Q&A. We went over them a little bit. Oh, actually it was, is World War III already upon us? November 2024. On that podcast, we went over this. So let me... Yeah, we can go over this. Let's go over it one more time, and then we'll get to the stuff nobody has ever gone over before. Set the stage a little bit. Let's let the triggered give coincidence theorists marinate in their Dunning-Kruger stupors as we examine the footage first. So let's look at what is being passed off as legitimate footage. So this is Teapot Apple II. So let's take a look at this. And let's see who thinks that this is totally real. So, there's a camera inside this. Somehow that film survived. I mean, okay, so I mean, okay. So before the internet was a thing, before people had, all these editing programs and did frame by frame analysis, I mean, I don't know. Would people back then not have thought, wait a second, this film would not have survived? All right, let's try to stay on topic in the chat here. We're talking about nukes here. If Jake, yeah, I mean, I would totally have Jake on the podcast for an interview if he wants to. If he wants to explain things. I mean, obviously, I don't really know that much about him or his situation. So anyway, so this is what was passed off as real here. I mean, this is weird. I mean, this is just really weird because, I mean, isn't it obvious that the cameras would and the film would not have survived if they're putting them inside these homes? So Operation Teapot here was a series of 14 nuclear test explosions conducted at Nevada test site first half of 1955. It was preceded by Operation Castle, followed by Operation Wigwam. Wigwam was administratively a part of Teapot, but it is usually treated as a class of its own. The aims of the operation were to establish military tactics for ground forces on a nuclear battlefield to improve nuclear weapons for strategic delivery. So, the Civil Defense Apple II shot May 5th, 55. Well, that's interesting. 5/5/55? Huh. Was intended to test various building construction types in a nuclear blast. An assortment of buildings, including residential houses and electrical substations, were constructed at the site, nicknamed Survival Town by some and Doom Town by others. The buildings were populated with mannequins and stocked with different types of canned and packaged foods. Not all of the buildings were destroyed in the blast, and some of them still stand at Area 1 Nevada test site. But, I mean, what I don't really understand is how would the camera and film have survived all of this? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make. I mean, I guess coincidence theorists would just buy it hook, line, and sinker, like they buy anything they see on the idiot box. But I mean, it just it seems kind of weird. It just seems kind of weird that they thought everybody would just buy this. Clark says massive doses of radiation for one, mass casualties, radioactive burns, Geiger. Yeah, well, I'm gonna actually get to all that, Clark. I'm gonna get to all that. Cameras were protected in lead boxes. Yeah, but what about the lens? What kind of magic glass did they have to protect the lens? You're saying a little lead box, the film would survive a little, like, how was the box even sealed? If it was sealed, they wouldn't be able to get the film in it, because the film would have to feed through the camera, and it would have to have glass. What kind of glass could survive this type of energy from this blast? Because I mean, it's not an enclosed you have to have, clearly there's a glass lens here. So how is the film cut off from the lens in this 50s technology? Well, some of the cameras could have been far, but even the ones that are far... I mean, let's look at it again. I mean, even the alleged... I mean, yeah, the ones really far away, I suppose, but these are all close. I mean, these are literally inside the homes. And yet the lens wasn't shattered completely. I mean, the lens would already be look at just the sheer amount of force, if that's all legit. If these aren't, like, small models. It's like, how did the film survive? Like, you see how gradual the blast was there? That lens would already be gone. The whole camera would be gone. Like, it would fry out it would fry the film because it's so bright. Not to mention, I mean, an opera singer can shatter glass. And a nuke wouldn't crack the lens? I mean, just the level of gophery one is asked. I mean, to believe in this. Lord Zed says they definitely have magic glass, but I don't think that applies here. It's just a fake nuke. Clark says, I have met old-timers who worked at Richland nuclear site that refined the plutonium for Little Man Bomb. I lived like 8 miles from nuclear arsenal. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously people that worked on the bombs. That doesn't mean there was any atom that was split. I mean, again, it's just like NASA. There's plenty of people that honestly worked on the program, and they might not know it was either fake, or maybe it started off trying to be real, and then they just pass it off as a hoax down the line. Obviously, all these people who worked on the project would not have known this. And perhaps early on, everything was legit, and it wasn't intended to be a hoax at the beginning. Justin says, Nukes is fear-mongering designed to control the sheeple. Yeah. Ethan W. says the radiation thing is sus because everything emits radiation. The word radiation simply means to radiate. Even normal bombs result in radiation in the air because the explosion causes excitement. Well, hold on. Like, I have some receipts here that nobody has ever seen before, including actual readings of the alleged radiation, all from official government sources that we're going to go over. So yes, there's a certain amount of radiation claimed, but are the claims even legitimate? And we'll be getting to that. But yeah, just regarding this, the image here, what kind of magic glass lenses did they have? I mean, so if that blew, I mean, the lens doesn't even crack, though. And so everything goes black, then you could see it again, and then it goes black. I mean, it's kind of weird. And you could see the artifacting on the film. I mean, wouldn't the film... Because how is the film cut off if it's encased in, I don't know how many feet of lead you would need to survive a nuclear bomb? Let's find out. Let's find out. So, the amount of lead needed for shielding depends on distance, desired level of protection. So, what if you're in the right in the middle of the blast radius? So, how much lead would you need there? Let's see. So, in a few hundred meters, you need 3... Well, these are just fallout shelters, not right within the blast radius. So yeah, I don't even know. I can't find exactly... So, I mean, there's protection from the radiation, but what about the actual energy from the blast? Yeah, so I mean, I can't find a photo of the camera or what kind of protection what kind of protection the camera had. But I mean, if it's inside the room, I mean, wow. So it says, yeah, they used lead shields. Seems a story. Huh. Apparently, it also, wow. Wow, hold on. I have another clip here from Adam Central. So, wow. Okay, so this claims. So, this is all claiming it's all legit. So, this is all official narrative footage. You guys are not going to believe this. Alright, wow. I haven't seen this clip yet. Okay, yeah, this is quite damning. That anybody believes that these are just incredibly powerful explosions. So, this is from the same source, Adam Central. So... see if this works here. So the camera and the lights inside the home, not only do they not get destroyed, but they don't even move, not even a little bit. They don't even wobble. Wow. Let's look at this clip here. Coincidence theorists, brace yourselves. And this is all official narrative. So they're just saying that they were incredibly robust. Again, this is footage passed off as real. So the house is completely obliterated here. And look at this. So the lights, the lights in the camera setup not only are not destroyed, there's not even a wobble. Look at those invincible lights. They should have made the World Trade Center out of those lights. I mean, not even a wobble. Not even a wobble. I mean, this is crazy. Look at that. They're not even wobbling. Not even a slight tremor in the camera setup. Oh, man. That's wild. That's wild. I mean, look at this. I mean, what is the coincidence theorist code for this? I mean, look at that. There's not even a slight wobble. I mean, look at those invincible lights. What are those lights made out of? Oh, man. Oh, man, this is crazy. Flat Bob says it looks like a model. Yeah, if these are all model miniatures, I mean, it could make sense, because obviously this wouldn't be a super high-powered blast. Like, if this is some kind of balsa wood setup or something like that, they could use a relatively, they could use firecrackers to produce something like this, and you know, if they have some really solid lights and cameras, obviously they could survive some light firecrackers with proper shield. But some kind of splitting of the atom with just this astronomical amount of energy explosion, I mean, you would think that would at least wobble. Like, let's say they do have magic lights. Let's say they have magic indestructible lights, film, camera, etc., lenses. But for them not to even wobble slightly? I mean, how much force? If this is a true splitting of the atom, if this is a true nuke, I mean, this is crazy. I mean, to not even have a slight wobble from this kind of force? I mean, look at that. There's not even a slight wobble in the face of the sheer obliteration. Look at those indestructible. Not even a wobble. Not even a wobble. And this is all pushed as all legitimate. All right. So now that we've set the stage, yeah. If these are all like some kind of balsa wood model miniatures, I mean, that would explain. I mean, yeah, you could shield, you know, a small camera setup, and perhaps, yeah, with some kind of just real basic fireworks or super low-powered explosives, perhaps, yeah, you can get some kind of shielding for the cameras to survive. All right, so let's move on to some of these smoking. I mean, those lights are kind of a smoking gun regarding the footage, but Clark says all that debris traveling thousands of miles an hour is glowing like a Christmas tree with radiation. Ever seen the burns from Nagasaki and Hiroshima? It's horrible. Yeah, well, what we're going to do is we're going to compare that with napalm in Vietnam. And we're going to see if they look absolutely identical. And we're going to see if the carpet bombing, the wreckage from carpet bombing with TNT in Vietnam is absolutely identical to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's what we're going to be looking at. And then we're also going to be looking at the official military reports examining the aftermath in not only Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but other Japanese cities which were carpet bombed. And we're going to be looking at all these photos and documentation to see if they're identical. Because if they're all identical, then where's the evidence for any of the nukes or radiation outside of whatever normal radiation would be emitted through other types of bombs? Danny Madness and the Thunder King says, Owen Benjamin does good coverage of this stuff. It's definitely on the table, as crazy as it sounds. Yeah, I mean, I have some stuff that nobody's ever gone over before regarding this theory. We're going to get into it right now. Right now. And we do have Clark, Military Man Clark, in the chat. Clark is very knowledgeable about many, many things, but perhaps this theory is new to him. But he's cool, so definitely looking forward to what he thinks after the presentation here, after the receipts are presented. I want to see what Clark will say. So that's some of the footage. And now let's get into some of these bigger receipts. So let's look. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. I'm trying to think what I want to start with. Let's see. What do you guys want to do first? The radiation. Actually, you know, yeah, we got a lot of radiation here to go over. Do you guys want to go over the photo evidence or radiation first? Okay, actually, let's do this. There's an interesting write-up here on winterwatch.com. It's a good intro. So we're going to start with this, and then I'll get into the into the receipts from so-called official sources, because that's the thing about coincidence theorists. They think everything's fake because it's coming from some kind of random blog. But in everything that we go over here in Mindcheck, I mean, I'm using government sources, peer reviewed scientific studies and articles, data sets straight from the government. And that's what we're going to be doing here as well. I mean, this is going to be all from government sources and official committees. So let's start with this article on Winter Watch. Just give me a second to bring it up. Okay, so this article on Winter Watch, very good intro to this theory. Was Hiroshima firebombed and not nuked? Just give me a second here. Got a little bit of lag. I want to get the whole article on the screen so everybody can follow along here. Okay. So obviously, we're not going to fall for false dichotomy logical fallacies. Obviously, it's not a case of either there were bombs or no bombs. Obviously, there were some kind of bombs. Following my article on the August 45 bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I received some challenges from readers concerning the notion the attack was in actuality another in a series of highly destructive firebombings that had been underway in Japan and Germany throughout 45. As I stated in the comment section, the focus of the article was only about the unnecessary prolonging the Pacific War. However, I tend to agree with the challengers. The firebombing theory does need to be addressed. It's not implausible, especially given that by the time of Hiroshima, the U.S. Strategic Bombing Command had terror bombing and cooking civilians down to an exact science. That's some dark phrasing. It is an established fact that napalm chemical firebombing of wooden Japanese cities was extremely destructive. In May 45, Tokyo was hit with incendiary payloads from 334 B-29 super fortresses, burning 16 square miles and destroying more than half of the city. The Hiroshima operation involved 4 square miles. Using the Tokyo ratio, it could have been achieved with 83 planes. So Tokyo was hit with 334, burning 16 square miles. Hiroshima, only 4 square miles. So it could have been achieved with far less planes and no nuclear or atomic weapons of any kind. Hiroshima was a wooden shanty town constructed in a concentrated area. It was a sitting duck for a carefully crafted firebombing terror attack with an atomic bomb psyop added on for full effect. In the previous article, regular TNN commentator Brabantien mentions evidence from Swedish engineer and nuclear expert Let me get the rest of the article on the screen here. And don't worry, I have all of the receipts with the exact data coming shortly. We're just doing the intro article at the moment. I'm gonna review comments in a second as well. Try to catch up. There. Okay. Just catch up to the comments and then we'll get to the next part of the article here. Lord Zed says, Carrot Top's dad worked for NASA. Enough said. Alright, hold on. Let's, Justin Johnson says, nuclear is just energy created by steam with uranium, in my opinion. Heracles says you can make high-pressure steam with radioactive material. Monty says, ever wonder why only ships and subs are nuclear? Why not trains, planes, and big rigs? Good questions there. Ethan W. says, didn't NDT, is that Neil deGrasse Tyson, admit the nukes don't emit the radiation as previously thought? Flat Bob says he did. Well, he's a goof. I mean, we're going to be going over info that's been known for decades here in a second. Ethan W. says the splitting of the atom was to fracture the psyche. These are atom bombs. Wow, that's interesting. Monty says Chernobyl has been a tourist destination for years and years. You can book a tour, no need to wait for hundreds of years. Yeah, there's actually a cool documentary. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna have time to go over it. We got so much other smoking guns. Yeah, it was something about the animals of Chernobyl and how all these animals just lived there since Chernobyl, and they were fine. I mean, pretty weird. I mean, people too. I mean, supposedly there's people that never left. Some of them supposedly had all these issues, and then others didn't, so who knows. Okay. Clark says, yes, firebomb storms a la Dresden and Tokyo did incinerate too. Napalm burns in gelatinous chunks. The radiation burns look a little different. Not as charred, more like sunburn X1000. Yeah, we're going to get to it. Ethan W. says Hiroshima and Nagasaki weren't even in the top 20 most destroyed Japanese cities during WW2. Justin Johnson says, unfortunately, our source of info always comes from compulsive liars. Thank God for this great awakening. Clark says massive EMP is also evidentiary. Flat Bob says if EMP was evidentiary, there wouldn't be footage. The electrical circuits would be fried. Clark says, not if shielded. Yeah, so it would need to be in a Faraday cage. Yeah. Alright, let's continue here. Okay, so... Okay, Hiroshima was a wooden shanty town constructed in a concentrated area. It was a sitting dock for a carefully crafted firebombing attack with an atom bomb psyop added for full effect. Okay. So, the smoking gun, the day and hour Hiroshima was bombed, U.S. Air Command logged a fleet of 66 bombers. That's an interesting number of bombers. For an operation in nearby Imabari, Japan, but this city no longer existed. It had been wiped out in 2 previous raids. This was the fleet that firebombed Hiroshima. Liddell Hart's History of the Second World War claims the Japanese on the ground didn't know they had been A-bombed until long after the end of the war. Allied occupation authorities also clamped down on eyewitness testimonies, which, by the way, we're going to be getting into. Testimonies that did come out often had a scriptive, deceptive quality to them. The accounts themselves could have been describing a napalm bombing, but then suggestive phrases are inserted into the narrative, such as strange yellow ray and sun ray. There are also accounts of a single B-29 flying over, but flying at 32,000 feet. The bomber would not be visible from the ground, nor would a small fleet. I mean, is this reminiscent of 9/11 for anybody? Like, all the earlier interviews, they just mentioned the bombs going off, nothing about any planes. Very interesting. And then all of that psyoped and changed, and the gullible goofs lap it all up. The coincidence theorists. Is that the same thing that happened here? And it is curious on how, which we'll be getting into more photos, but one aspect, like one staple of carpet bombing, is that random buildings will survive because, you know, they're not going to be dropping... there's not going to be explosive every inch of the ground because the planes are flying over. So there's going to be random buildings surviving. Concrete, I mean, there's even wooden buildings that survive. Whereas if there's an alleged splitting of the atom, if there's just such a massive blast, obviously random buildings wouldn't be completely intact, standing right next to decimated buildings. We'll be getting into, more of that later. However, one eyewitness, Father John A. Simez, source Yale's website, the Avalon Project, provided more details as to how this may have went down. So here it is. Here, it was rumored that enemy flyers had spread an explosive and incendiary material over the city and then had created the explosion and ignition. A few maintained that they saw the planes drop a parachute which had carried something that exploded at a height of 1,000 meters. No one knew anything for certain concerning the nature of the bomb. The bombing planners, drawing from their science of mass killing, first spread incendiary material to prep the target. This soaked kindling could have been lit like a match from a small high-flying fleet of B-29s. This makes it possible to destruct the target with even less than 66 aircraft, and would make it a highly contained and controlled operation. In pursuing the issue, we note the absence of a mushroom cloud photos from the ground in Japan. Among the very few photos of the Hiroshima bombing that do exist, the following 3 suggest a raging firestorm, not a nuclear explosion. The photos appear consistent with the others shot at different distances and angles. These firestorms were described at Hamburg in 43, Dresden in 45, and the various other Japanese incinerations of 45. Yeah, I mean, that looks like pretty standard bombing there. Note that the size is not quite astronomical in relation to the buildings here. Let me catch up to the comments here. Catch you next time, Flat Bob. Big Pine Sailing says, I spent about a year in Nagasaki in 2006-ish. Yeah, feel free to share any insight. Clark says, Nagasaki and Hiroshima were purposely not targeted for large-scale firebombing precisely to document and assess the payload of the nuke. We're going to get into that in a second. We're going to get into the findings of the investigators that compared the bombings. So hold your horses, Clark. We're well aware what the official narrative is, but... All right, so yeah, let's continue here. We haven't even gotten to any of the smoking guns yet. I mean, we're still on the intro here. Okay, so continuing on here. The Daily Telegraph, January 9, 2013, published this new photo taken of the bombing. It, too, resembles a firebombing and developing firestorm. Yep, looks pretty consistent. In the book, Osada's Children of the A-Bomb, a survivor describes a scene that is altogether different from an A-bomb, stating, quote, I looked up to the sky, a streamer of smoke perhaps 50 yards high, rising from the center of Hiroshima about 2 miles distant. At the top of the column of smoke was a ball of fire which seemed to me to be about the size of a large oil tank. U.S. Major Alexander P. Deseveresky, who in 1945 inspected the bomb towns of Japan, testified, quote, in Hiroshima, I was prepared for radically different sights. But to my surprise, Hiroshima looked exactly like all the other burned out cities in Japan. There was a familiar pink blot about 2 miles in diameter. It was dotted with charred trees and telephone poles. Only one of the city's 20 bridges was down. So an atomic bomb can't even take out a bridge? Hiroshima's clusters of modern buildings in the downtown section stood upright. It was obvious that the blast could not have been so powerful as we have been led to believe. It was extensive blast rather than intensive. I had heard of buildings instantly consumed by unprecedented heat, yet here I saw the building structurally intact, and what is more, topped by undamaged flagpoles, lightning rods, painted railing. It didn't even take the paint off the railings. Air raid precaution signs and other comparatively fragile objects. An A-bomb couldn't even take out some signs? It couldn't even take a paint off the railing? That's a lot different than that video footage we watched earlier of alleged tests. At the T-bridge, the aiming point for the atomic bomb, I looked for the bald spot where everything presumably had been vaporized in the twinkling of an eye. It wasn't there or anywhere else. I could find no traces of unusual phenomena. What I did see was, in substance, a replica of Yokohama or Osaka or the Tokyo suburbs, the familiar residue of an area of wood and brick houses razed by uncontrollable fire. Everywhere I saw the trunks of charred and leafless trees, burned and unburned chunks of wood. So this blast just left random wood completely intact and uncharred. The fire had been intense enough to bend and twist steel girders and to melt glass until it ran, unless you're using that magic camera glass that they used to film the tests in Nevada, and until it ran like lava, just as in other Japanese cities. The concrete buildings nearest to the center of explosion, some only a few blocks from the heart of the atom blast, showed no structural damage. Let me repeat that again for the coincidence theorists. The concrete buildings nearest to the center of explosion, some only a few blocks from the heart of the atom blast, showed no structural damage. Even cornices, canopies, and delicate exterior decorations were intact. Window glass was shattered, of course, but single panel frames held firm. Only window frames of 2 or more panels were bent and buckled. The blast impact, therefore, could not have been unusual. So once again, this is the official observations of U.S. Major Alexander P.D. Seversky, who personally inspected all of the different bombed towns. I mean, that's actually really, really curious, is it not? Now, let's look at the image here corroborating his testimony. So, this right here is the image, and you can see how these are completely intact. I mean, not a lot of damage at all. And he's saying it didn't even take paint off of railings, and then there were random signs that weren't even damaged. I mean, that is very, very curious. And this is a guy who believes basically the official narrative. I mean, he's on payroll. He's literally on U.S. military payroll. And his actual job is to inspect all these different cities. And he's saying they're absolutely identical. I mean, look at that. There's multiple buildings here with not even, according to him, no kind of structural damage whatsoever. And window frame, it didn't even damage the window frames. It didn't even take paint off of railings. I mean, now we're getting to some more receipts here. I mean, there's plenty more here, but... So this is Ground Zero, Hiroshima 45. So this is the hypocenter, the point directly below the bomb explosion. And just like in random carpet-bombed cities, there's gonna be buildings. Some buildings are gonna remain completely intact because they can't destroy every inch. Obviously, some kind of nuclear or atomic blast would. Clark says, it's irresponsible to say and disrespectful of 10,000 of human souls consumed in these very real bombings. It's not cool to be obstinate about everything. The truth doesn't matter. Well, what are you talking about, Clark? First of all, that's an appeal to emotion. And it's also a straw man because nobody is disputing that the bombings were real. These were obviously real bombings, carpet bombings and fire bombings that killed a lot of innocent people. Nobody's disputing that, so there's no reason to get triggered and start straw manning. I actually opened with that, obviously. I mean, I'm doing the opposite here. Obviously, most of these people, if not, I mean, most of them, I mean, maybe there was some kind of military presence, but this is civilians getting killed. These are civilians getting killed by these bombings. Now, what we're talking about is was an atom split here? Clearly not. I mean, it's also disrespectful, Clark, to completely ignore the testimony of a U.S. major specifically tasked with examining all these bombed cities. Obviously, civilians should not be bombed, whether it's Japan or Germany or whatever. I mean, it's absolute. The evils of statism we go over on this channel many, many times. You should know better than to make such a silly statement, Clark. We go over the statism, the deadliest religious cult in history. Because of statism, all millions, hundreds of millions are dead because of statism. So, yeah, this is the guy that was tasked with inspecting the cities, and he's really surprised that Hiroshima and Nagasaki look identical to all the other firebombed cities. That's a curiosity, to say the least. To say the least, that is a curiosity. And I mean, we're just getting started here. I have another photograph here. And these are all consistent photographs, so they all match up. And you could see, and they match his testimony as well. I mean, let's compare a few things here. So this is Rotterdam, May 14th, 1940. German bombers set the entire inner city on fire with incendiary bombs. And you could see how, you know, a lot of it's just decimated and flattened, but bridges and random buildings are completely intact. Just like in Hiroshima. I mean, just look at the consistency in all of these photos. Here's another view of Hiroshima. And so, I mean, you could just see, like, these are all practically identical in style, where you have just complete decimation and then completely intact buildings with practically no damage at all. Furthermore, we have the infamous... Hold on, let me make sure I can do this in... Oh, I want to do this in order. I mean, here's a color photo. So this building, I don't have the stats on this photo, but you could also see how there's just random light poles, like random wooden poles still standing. Random other buildings completely unaffected. This one looks like it has structural damage, but... yeah, I don't know which building that is compared to other... Like, this photo is a little closer. But you could see in this other photo, all of these buildings here. I mean, you have buildings that are completely structurally intact. Like, they don't look like they've been through anything at all. Right next to, you know, complete decimation. Here's another one of Ground Zero here. And you could see the bridges match the testimony. Only one bridge is destroyed. And then, yeah, there's just these random buildings. This is a couple weeks after, but completely intact. Very curious, isn't it? It's almost like the Hawaii and California fires, where you have complete decimation and then, you know, a house of rubble right next to a completely unscathed house with not a scratch on it. And even blades, even someone's lawn completely untouched by fire right next to a completely burnt out yard. Very, very curious. Very, very curious indeed. And then here's another interesting piece of information. So, apparently, in Hiroshima, they couldn't even take out these random poles here. And the tram, the Hiroshima tram, apparently never even stopped running in the middle of this alleged A-bomb. So the tramway, which is still one of the most symbolic scenes of the city of Hiroshima, was also devastated. However, just 3 days after the bombing, some section of the road were restored and trams were back in operation. I mean, these bombs are so powerful. I mean, firebombed cities didn't have trams like the other cities that were firebombed. They didn't have trams operating 3 days later. I mean, they couldn't even take out the cables. I mean, it's kind of unclear here what date this is. I mean, you could see the poles were not, like, these are not new poles, because you could see them. You could see that the poles were not destroyed. So, I don't know, maybe the cables were, and they put new cables here? I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell if those cables are new or not. I mean, some of the signs here, some of these paper signs on the post don't look new, though. They look pretty old and tattered. They couldn't even take out the paper. I mean, this is also consistent. This is all consistent. Absolutely consistent with U.S. Major Alexander P. de Seversky, who inspected this. I mean, he said that it didn't even take the paint off of railings. Here's another smoking gun photograph here. I mean, it couldn't even take out a tram. An A-bomb can't take out a little flimsy tram. I mean, it completely, in the alleged real tests, I mean, everything was completely decimated other than the cameras and the lights, which didn't even wobble. Oh, hold on 1 second. Here's another photograph. For some reason, this photo is not working. This is probably the most damning photograph. And are we really going to start glitching out here? Really, YouTube? Really? Oh, man. Okay. All right. Okay, here we go. So here's a color photograph of Hiroshima. I mean, look at that. You have little shanties. You have little shanties completely unaffected. You have some of these larger buildings completely unaffected. And it's right next to, obviously, completely decimated rubble. But look at some of these shanties. I mean, that roof doesn't even look scratched. Are those sandbags on top of the roof? Did those, if those are sandbags, did those sandbags hold down the roof? And you can see two people walking on the street there. The street doesn't even, I mean, maybe they cleared the street. I don't know how far this is after. But if those are sandbags, I mean, it also looks like, look at that pane of glass there on this building. It looks like the top pane broke, but it looks like there's still glass there on the. If that's glass, there's two panes on the bottom that wasn't broken. And you could see, yeah, you could see that those poles, those electric poles or whatever they are, they're still on the street. You could see some of these random columns here that didn't fall down. I mean, this is curious stuff here. And those are some of the larger buildings with apparently zero structural damage. I mean, look, some of these, is that a chimney or whatever that is? Unaffected. But look at some of these little, look at some of these tiny little huts or shacks. Little shanties, completely unaffected by an A-bomb? I mean, what kind of level of goof does one have to be to think that this matches what is purported to be an A-bomb? I mean, clearly this is an absolutely devastated city, but so are all the firebombed cities. Perhaps even more devastated than this. But look at that tram. I mean, the tram still... The tram... So supposedly that's the exact same tram. Does anybody even see that many scratches on it? It doesn't even look like it has dents or scratches in it. And that glass... Did that glass not break? That doesn't look like new glass that they replaced, but it looks all dusty. That looks real dusty. Did it not even break the glass in the tram? Or look at that. It was at a headlight. Look at that light on top of the tram. I mean, wow. I mean, wow. Who's buying this A-bomb narrative? I mean, we didn't even get to the real receipts yet. I mean, we're just getting started here. Domino Truth says, did anyone ever hear the story of the man who survived both bombings? They actually aired his story on the History Channel. I believe it was on the show with William Shatner. Is that the show, like that Believe It or Not show or whatever? And some of the promos for it were like, when the shat hits the fan, or something like that. I remember one of those commercials. That was years ago. Justin says, the first thing you're going to do is get that tram back running is laughable. No, but look, did the windows not even get damaged? Those windows don't even have cracks in them. There's not a single scratch or... I mean, there's definitely dust. This is definitely a dusty old tram. Yeah, supposedly it's still running today. So that's either... Maybe that tram was made out of the same material the lights and the cameras were made out of. Or the passport paper at 9/11. I mean, maybe they have some kind of secret materials. Domino Truth says, he lived in his late 80s or early 90s. In my opinion, that would have been impossible if he had been hit with atomic bombs. Yeah, we're actually going to get to the survivor statistics. Okay, so, yeah, fascinating stuff here. Absolutely fascinating. So let's get to the next part here. I mean, we're still kind of on the intro, but... Yeah, we got a whole lot of stuff to go over here. Oh, man. Okay. So the actual, just to round out this article here. Finally, one of the biggest red flags for me that this may not have been atomic was a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1990. A 40-year study of thousands of Japanese who survived the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki found radiation exposure did not cause genetic damage that could lead to mutations. The researcher, John Boyce of the National Cancer Institute, said, quote, ionizing radiation is known to cause heritable mutations in many species of plants and animals, but an intense study of 70,000 offspring, so we're not talking about a couple people here. Like some of these studies have like a few dozen people or even 100. 70,000 offspring of atomic bomb survivors has failed to identify an increase in congenital abnormalities, cancer, chromosome aberrations, or mutational blood protein changes. So what happened to all this alleged deadly radiation, this deadly fallout? I mean, this is quite interesting. Because that's how the story goes. That's what the narrative states. And the New York Times actually printed this as well regarding this study. Let's get this receipt on the screen here for the coincidence theorists. So here you go. Just, I mean, we're gonna go through all the receipts here for those claiming this article is BS. So here you go. New York Times, Hiroshima study finds no genetic damage. Let's go a little further here. Regarding the radiation. So let's go further here. Here's a 1951 statistical analysis of the medical effects of the atomic bombs from the report of the Joint Commission for the Investigation of the Effects of the Atomic Bomb in Japan, April 19, 1951. Technical report. All the URLs and receipts are right on the screen here from the U.S. Department of Energy and Office of Scientific and Technical Information. So this is the salient point here. Acute radiation sickness in relation to the hypocenter in patients who were exposed in the open. So these are not people that had shelter. So this is less than 1 kilometer. So 105 people were alive 20 days after. Only 22 died later. All should have died. From 1.1 to 1.5 kilometer distance, 249 were alive on day 20. 9 died later, and only 42.6% suffered ARS, whereas all of them should. From 1.6 to 2 kilometers away, 689 were alive on day 20. Only 14.2% with ARS. Only 4 died later. So in the coming months, the observation period in the coming months, from 2.1 to 2.5 kilometers away, 590 alive on day 20, only 6.8% with ARS. 1 died later. So none should have suffered ARS at that distance, supposedly, according to the official narrative. And what's curious is that more had ARS at a distance of 2.6 to 3 kilometers than at 2.1 to 2.5. And 192 alive on day 20, 0 died later. And 3.1 to 4 kilometers away, 159, 3.8% with ARS, 0 died later. 4.1 to 5 kilometers away, 68 were alive on day 20. Only 2.9% with ARS, 0 died later. So this is the table summarization from Hiroshima, collected by the Joint Commission of Japanese and American physicians. So not one side, you had both participating here. On bombing victims who were still alive 20 days after the bombing. The category died later pertains to the remaining period of observation, which is unspecified in the report, but apparently included several months. So, months later, only 22 died from less than a kilometer from the hypocenter. I mean, this is madness. I mean, this is directly from the... You can find this right on OSTI.gov for the coincidence theorist. The exact URL is on the screen right here, osti.gov/biblio/4381263. There is the major receipt right there for the coincidence theorists. All right, who's ready for yet another smoking gun? I mean, this is possibly the biggest smoking gun. Who's ready for it here? Clark, are you still triggered at this? Are you still triggered here? Clark says they are real. You will find out when they are used on you because you were scoffing at their supposed existence. Ouch, that would suck. How would that suck worse than a different type of bomb that would still kill you or give you radiation poisoning? Like, is there a difference in suckage? Because if these regular bombs are enough to kill all these people and anybody, like, what's the difference there? Other than your blind faith in the official narrative of nukes, like, what's the difference? What's the difference in suckage from getting bombed into oblivion with one type of bomb versus another? Like, what's the difference in suckage? I mean, we're about to get to the biggest smoking gun, so I hope Clark is sitting down for this. Because this is the biggest receipt. I've never seen anybody go over this next receipt here. Coincidence theorists are not gonna like this one. So right here. Thermoluminescence results from Hiroshima. Were they poorly faked on purpose? Alright, so this is the teaser. Then we're going to get into it a little bit deeper here. So the raw luminescence signal, and again, whoever conducted this, it's almost like they were blowing the whistle on themselves, right? Because that's what we're going to be looking at here. And all the sources on the screen right here. So the raw luminescence signal is very low in all samples. They should have been highest near the hypocenter. The calibration factor is a property of sample materials, should have no relationship to distance. The probability of 7 measured calibration factors showing this uniformly decreasing trend by chance is 1 in 5,040.02%. This graph shows the data from one of the first studies that used thermoluminescence to quantify Y radiation from the bomb. As explained above, the dose of Y radiation is determined from the raw luminescence and the calibration factor. We should expect the luminescence to be highest near the hypocenter and then drop off with increasing distance. However, we see that the luminescence is flat. It even increases slightly with distance. Miraculously, however, the Y radiation intensity turns out as expected because the calibration factors save the day here. So, we're going to go a little deeper here into this article and how thermoluminescence is possibly the biggest smoking gun here. Okay, give me a second here. Let me get the next receipt. Because we're going to be using controls here. This is something coincidence theorists hate. They hate the scientific method. They hate controls. Because what is the ever-present radiation versus the radiation of firebombings versus the radiation of an alleged atomic bomb? That's the important question, because without that, you're just engaging in scientism propaganda. So let's go to the next exhibit here. All sources will be on the screen. Okay. So this is from mpalmer.heresy.is. This particular write-up. So let's look at this here for more context. Okay, so here we have the bomb fission product versus natural background radioactivity. So this figure from Shizuma, so this is 1996, Health, VC 137C S concentration in soil samples from an early survey of Hiroshima atomic bomb and cumulative dose estimation from the fallout. So this illustrates one salient finding, namely the vanishing small amount of nuclear fission products on the ground, even in samples as this one, which was collected in Hiroshima merely 3 days after the bombing, before any of the fallout would have been dispersed by wind and rain. The fission product in question, the radioactive cesium isotope 137, has a half-life of 30 years. At the time of the bombing, the peak would therefore have been about 3 times higher than in this measurement, which occurred some 50 years after the bombing. Nevertheless, it would still have been overshadowed by the activity of several naturally occurring radioactive isotopes, most conspicuously of that by 40K. Thus, the fallout radioactivity on the ground was low even very shortly after the bombing, where it should have been the highest. So where's this alleged fallout? So we have a control here, the natural background radioactivity, because obviously scientism cultists, bootlickers, they hate controls. They hate the scientific method. So here we have, factoring in controls here, where's the fallout? I mean, can you help us out here, Clark? Where's the fallout? Clark says, you believe Bjorkman exists because you see pics of his family, but discount the testimony of literally thousands of witnesses, because we didn't discount thousands of witnesses. I'm going to get to all the witness reports, Clark. I'm going through the hard science here first. So apparently there's no real fallout. I mean, nothing matches. There's no genetic damage. I mean, we're going to get to the witnesses. We're going to get to the witnesses, Clark. Just getting started here, man. Just getting started. Got tons of witnesses, actually. Pretty close to the epicenter as well. And there's even witnesses who did not have to avert their eyes. Apparently it wasn't that bright. We're going to get to all of them, Clark, with all receipts on the screen, as always. All right. So, lack of fallout here. Quite a problem. Kind of a problem if you're trying to push the narrative here. I mean, that it seems to me that that's kind of an issue. Now we have quite a few more issues here. Oh, by the way, the source for Seversky is his book, Air Power Key to Survival 1950. And so let me get that on the screen for the coincidence theorists. We always bring the receipts here on Mindshock. So again, this is, I mean, whose testimony? Seversky here, I mean, who would be more qualified than Seversky? So he inspected all the different cities in Japan specifically to differentiate between the carpet bombings, the fire bombings, and the atom bombs, and he found no difference at all. So this is Alexander P.D. Seversky, publisher Herbert Jenkins, London, 1952, Air Power Key to Survival. World Cat title 925991274. And he's quite celebrated. Smithsonian, National Air and Space Museum. You can look him up. I mean, he's well known. He's not some nobody. President Harry S. Truman awarded Seversky here 1947 International Harmon Trophy to Major Alexander P.D. Seversky for outstanding leadership, patriotism, unselfish devotion to the security and aeronautic progress of the United States. So clearly, a foremost expert in aviation. Again, this guy was specifically tasked with inspecting the bombed cities of Japan to note the differences between the alleged A-bombs and the regular firebombing, carpet-bombed cities, and he found none. Absolutely no difference. That's kind of curious. I don't know why Clark Rice in the chat here is ignoring this man's testimony. There's even more from the book here. Alexander P.D. Seversky, early expert witness on the signs of destruction in both cities, to quote, "To my utter astonishment, Hiroshima from the air looked exactly like all the other burned out cities I had observed. For 2 days I examined Hiroshima. I looked for the bald spot. It wasn't there. I searched for other traces of phenomena that could reasonably be tagged as unusual. I couldn't find them." So, I mean, if an A-bombed city is absolutely indistinguishable from any other firebombed city, perhaps it's not an A-bombed city. I'm just, I don't know, just thinking out loud here. I mean, is it that crazy?
Alexander D. Seversky was an eminent military pilot and aeronautical engineer. At the end of the war, he was sent on an inspection tour to Germany's and Japan's bombed out cities. Based on the stories of the atomic bombs, he expected to find a radically different pattern of damage in Hiroshima and Nagasaki than in cities that had been destroyed by conventional bombings. As this quote from his book, Air Power Key to Survival, makes clear, D. Seversky could find no evidence showing that the two cities had indeed been atomized rather than destroyed by conventional bombings. Note in particular that he doesn't mention any atomic shadows and the like. The quote given here mentions only Hiroshima, but later on in the same chapter of his book, he explicitly confirms the same for Nagasaki. Are there any coincidence theorists left in the chat here? Any coincidence theorists left? All right. Well, I mean, we're just getting started here. I mean, just the amount of receipts here. I mean, when you actually stop and look at the actual science, I mean, what is here? Let's go to the next exhibit here. Just give me a second to get the next part on the screen. The receipts just keep on coming. I mean, this is just madness, isn't it? Is there no end in sight to the scientific receipts of lack of fallout, lack of any substantiation of the splitting of the atom here? Next exhibit we have here, also from Shizuma. So let's look at what's going on with the uranium. So, next exhibit here. Bomb-derived uranium-235 and residue of black rain on a piece of plasterboard from Hiroshima. So samples may contain natural background, mostly U-238, and bomb uranium, mostly U-235. The highest measured fraction of bomb uranium, 0% in A, 0.2 in B, 10% C, 80% D, 99% E. In Hiroshima, the radioactive fallout was carried downward by the famous black rain, which fell upon the city within an hour after the bombing. The picture shows a plasterboard from a house whose roof had been blown off in the attack, which had become soiled by drops of black rain. So the roof, so what was it? Is this a piece of wooden roof? So it just flew off? So this was like a light tropical storm type energy? So it didn't even break? This piece of... it didn't even break. Look at the frame here. If that's the original frame, there's barely a scratch on it. I mean, that's crazy. I don't even... Does anybody see any scratches? It looks like there's some wear and tear here on the bottom of the frame. And on the right... On the left side looks absolutely immaculate, doesn't it? The wood on the left side. I mean, that looks absolutely immaculate. That doesn't even look like it's been through a rainstorm of any kind, like a light rainstorm. The Hiroshima bomb allegedly contained some 50 kilograms of the fissile uranium isotope 235U, of which only about 1 kilogram is said to have actually fissioned. The remainder would have been dispersed, and accordingly, we should expect a very high amount of this bomb uranium in these black rain residues. It turns out, however, that the isotope ratios in these samples indicate that no more than 0.2% of the total uranium could have been derived from the bomb. The other 99.8% must be ascribed to the natural background. Source Shizuma K 2012 isotope ratios in black rain streaks on plaster wall caused by fallout of the Hiroshima atomic bomb. This is all peer-reviewed scientific journals for the coincidence theorists. So this tiny amount of bomb uranium is too low, even in proportion to the minuscule amounts of fission product that can also be detected in the same samples. The measured cesium excess indicates that the fission yield is higher than the low number given in the official story of the bomb. However, the fission yields inferred from measurements are in the range one would expect with reactor waste. Interesting. I mean, this is kind of crazy. I mean, just everywhere we look, nothing matches what would be expected from a legitimate splitting of the atom and the result of such. All right, who's ready for another massive, massive smoking gun? I mean, I don't know how anybody comes back from any of this. I mean, the coincidence theorist cope here. I mean, I don't know. Their cope is probably just going to be to ignore all of the actual scientific evidence here. I mean, this next one's a doozy. It's an absolute doozy. Give me a second to get this on the screen. Obviously, all the receipts here, all from peer-reviewed scientific journals. Alright, so here's the next exhibit. Okay. So this is the sediment of the Nishiyama Reservoir. The fallout and soot are separated by 1 to 2 years. A detailed study has looked for the fallout within different layers of sediment from that reservoir. Rather high levels of plutonium and cesium are indeed found several meters below the bottom. However, this radioactivity is found some 15 centimeters above the layer of soot from the burning city. The distance between the two layers corresponds to a difference of about 2 years in time of deposition. It thus appears that the radioactive plutonium and cesium were introduced into the reservoir some years after the bombing. I mean, what is the coincidence theorist cope here? And the source here is Saito Kokubu. This is 2008 depositional records of plutonium and cesium released from the Nagasaki atomic bomb in sediment of the Nishiyama Reservoir at Nagasaki. So, what is the coincidence theorist cope here? I mean, we got plenty more receipts here. So, apparently, this radiation was somehow introduced years after the fact. So, did they not cover their bases initially? So they kind of fudged this so that if someone would come back later, but obviously you can tell So what's the point here? Was it just faked poorly, kind of like 9/11 on purpose, as some kind of by faked, I mean the official narrative not being true. Obviously, you know, a lot of people died. But did the is it all kind of like the blowing of the whistle on themselves, kind of like a serial killer calling the police station for fun and see, just to laugh at the gullible coincidence theorists, the statist bootlickers. Does any coincidence theorist have an answer for any of this? Nobody? What happened to that misinfo agent in the chat? Did he did he just throw in the towel? Nobody has an answer for any of this? Is there not a single coincidence theorist left in the chat? Lord Zed says they could see Bruce's last dragon lady shrine. Oh, we do have another I do have to do the next part in the last dragon conspiracy. Thanks for reminding me, Lord Zed. So no coincidence theorist has an answer for any of this. Very curious. Very, very curious indeed. So here's this guy's M. Palmer's summary of all these findings here. Once again, all of the sources we just went over, these are all in peer-reviewed scientific journals for all the coincidence theorist scientism goofs who worship at those altars. So, nuclear fallout at Hiroshima and Nagasaki summary. So, Hiroshima's the alleged uranium bomb. Artificial radioactivity is detectable only in minuscule amounts. No evidence of highly enriched bomb uranium. Isotope mixture consistent with weakly enriched reactor material. Nagasaki was the alleged plutonium bomb. The fallout concentrated in one spot far away from the hypocenter and deposited not at the time of the bombings, but only 2 years after. Conclusion: bomb grade uranium and plutonium were both unavailable in 1945. Inadequate but determined efforts to fake bomb fallout in both cities. Well, here's the thing, too. I mean, it looks like they faked it poorly on purpose, right? I mean, look at the moon landing. Just to have those wires yanking up the astronauts. I mean, there's orange juice spilled on supposedly vacuum sealed suits. I'll be going over that in the next episode in the Apollo series. But I mean, none of it really makes any sense. It's like it's like a ludicrous narrative on purpose, just to laugh at those gullible enough to believe it. Is that what this is? All right, let's go to the next piece of the summary here. So, evidence of bomb radiation from indirect measurements. The nuclear bomb should have released both Y radiation and neutron radiation. Energy from Y radiation can be captured by ceramic materials, bricks and roof tiles, and released at a later time as thermoluminescence. Neutrons are captured by atomic nuclei on the ground, which may thereby become radioactive. This induced radioactivity can likewise be measured later. There is a large number of studies that purport to prove and quantify the radiation that was allegedly emitted during the bombings. The intensity of bomb radiation inferred from such experiments is rather high, which forms a strange contrast to the minuscule amounts of radioactive fallout found on the ground, even mere days after the bombings. The measurement of Y radiation by thermoluminescence. Ceramic materials exposed to Y radiation can capture and store some of their energy for long periods of time. The stored energy can be released as light by heating the sample to about 200 to 400 degrees Celsius. The initial heating run gives a non-calibrated raw luminescent signal. Calibration is performed afterwards by irradiating the energy-depleted sample with a known dose of Y radiation and then measuring again. The calibration factor tells us how much emitted light to expect for a given amount of Y rays with this particular sample. This experimental method has interesting applications in archaeology. Pieces of pottery that have become emplaced underground will over time become charged by natural radioactivity in the surrounding soil, and the thermoluminescence measured on such samples can be used to estimate their age. The use of thermoluminescence in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, on the other hand, is beset with problems. So this is what I actually started with earlier here, and this was how we led into this analysis here. The thermoluminescence results from Hiroshima, were they poorly faked on purpose? So the raw luminescence signal is very low in all samples. Should have been highest near the epicenter. And here it is, the lowest. I mean, wow. Wow. Do any coincidence theorists have any responses here? Clark says, expletive, expletive, expletive. Bruce, you got me doubting the official narrative again. Well, that's why I told you to wait until I was done with my presentation. I mean, it's weird because, yeah, it's kind of weird. So let's continue here. Because thermoluminescence, I mean, this is the smoking gun here. Because, I mean, it's so weird because you would think, yeah, wouldn't they want to fake it, like, better? To make it not so obvious? It's just kind of weird. It's just kind of weird. And again, this is like a common theme. Whether you're talking 9/11 or some of these other events, it's just weird. Sampling sites used in thermoluminescence study. Another major problem with this entire methodology is that the thermoluminescence energy imparted by the Y radiation would have promptly released again by the heat of the supposed nuclear flash, as well as by the widespread fires which followed the bombing. Very many samples of tiles and bricks should have therefore been duds. The study discussed above does not mention this issue at all, which is highly suspicious. Not to mention, look how intact that is. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. But how often is the official narrative correct about anything, though? I mean, just, stroll down history lane. I mean, how often is the official narrative correct about anything? More fake evidence. What was the energy of that neutron radiation and when exactly was it released? So the roof tile from Shima Hospital, you have the neutral energy in percentage, thermal low, epithermal higher. 96.4. Years after the bombing, it goes to plus 3.1. Then you have the roof tile at Shima Hospital, a different roof tile, 79.21, negative 0.25. Then you have granite from the Motoyasu Bridge, 74.26 plus 0.5 years after the bombing. And then you have granite from a random tombstone, 0, 100, and not available years after the bombing. All of the samples listed here were collected fairly close to the hypocenter, and therefore they should have been exposed to the same kind of neutron radiation. However, the energy of those neutrons was clearly different between these samples, even between the two roof tiles from the same building. One of these tiles even seems to have been exposed to radiation several years after the bombing. Thus, at least some of these samples must have been fabricated in the lab. Very, very curious. Very, very curious. In summary, no credible evidence of bomb radiation is to be found anywhere, not in the fallout studies, and neither in these indirect radiation measurements. The low amount of fallout and its isotope composition in particular make it plain that no atomic bombs could have exploded. I mean, this is damning stuff here. I haven't seen any response to any of this. All right, so we've been going for 2 hours now. I'm gonna end this here, and then we're gonna go into the actual radiate. We're gonna go more into the radiation sickness in survivors as well as witness reports in the next episode. Any final questions about any of this? Any rebuttals to this? No coincidence theorists left in the chat. Oh, welcome Pinto Sack. Didn't see you here in here. Phil into Blanc. But yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff here I've never seen anybody go over. The thermoluminescence is so curious here. It is just so curious, as well as all these other accounts. I mean, wow. So, hope this was enlightening to many. Plenty more receipts to come. In the next episode, we'll go over the radiation sickness and actual eyewitness reports of people who apparently didn't even need to avert their eyes from the blast. Many, many witnesses. So we'll be going into all of that and more in the next episode. Hope everybody found another edition of the Mindshock podcast interesting and informative. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.